Hi, Matthew here and welcome to another video. We need to discuss the new debt respite policy that's due to come into force on May the 4th this year, so May the 4th 2021. It's been kicking around for the last 3 years or so, since 2017, and like any government policy, it takes quite a while to find its way through the system. So what is debt respite? Well, it's been referred to as debt breathing space. It's a period of up to 60 days of enforcement protection for anyone with problem debt. An individual does have to qualify for the breathing space, and in order to do so they must seek professional debt advice. They will then need to meet the necessary requirements and criteria. But anyone that does qualify is granted up to 60 days legal protection for most forms of enforcement action, contact from creditors, and the interest on any debts is frozen to prevent them from spiralling any further out of control. There are also stronger special provisions for circumstances surrounding mental health, and these provisions are only available for those that are actually receiving mental health crisis treatment. They do last for however long the person is receiving treatment, plus 30 days, no matter how long the treatment lasts. Now, there's no doubt that a scheme like this is long overdue and should provide some welcome breathing space for the tens of thousands of people each year which have a real and genuine struggle with debt. I'm sure it's not the holy grail of solutions, and there's still a lot to do to help the most vulnerable people. It's reported that over 100,000 people a year do attempt suicide because of their debts. So surely this is a step in the right direction and should potentially save some lives. Now, as a buy-to-let landlord myself, it is clear to see how undoubtedly at some point in the future I will encounter these new measures. And at first glance it does appear that the new regulations yet again unfairly punish landlords and prevent us from recouping money that we are rightfully owed. But I do also see the benefits of offering any individual with debt problems the 60-day breathing space could potentially encourage them to seek debt advice in the first place. All too often people are either too proud or they don't know where to turn to for debt advice. They may simply just bury their head in the sand and hope it goes away, which in the long run leads to further debt and basically next to no chance that a landlord will ever recover any rent arrears. For a long time now it's been on the government's agenda to encourage longer, more stable tenancies for tenants. So I can now see how these new breathing space measures and abolishing Section 21s go hand in hand to try to encourage a mentality in the rental sector of landlords committing long-term to tenants and working with them even if they do go into debt. What I can say on a personal level is that over the years I have had tenants go into what you might call significant debt. I have worked with them, and over the long term, even beyond their actual tenancies, we have been able to work together and recover all of that rent arrears. So it can work. If tenants get the correct advice, get control of their debts, then there's no reason why that landlords and tenants can't work together over a longer term. So instead of a lot of landlords instantly jumping towards trying to evict a tenant, they should really be seen as a last resort. They inevitably end up costing the landlord more money in the end anyway. And the likelihood of recovering rent arrears post-eviction, it's often like trying to get blood out of a stone. It doesn't take much experience for a landlord to spot a tenant that genuinely wants to resolve their debts. And of course there are always some bad eggs out there that simply want to play the system and don't give a damn about the debts. This new breathing space policy is not intended for them anyway. So as a landlord, if your tenant claims to be having serious financial problems, at least they do now have an incentive to seek debt advice. By doing so, they may potentially qualify for the breathing space, and at least then that demonstrates to you that they are serious about resolving their problems. Now, I must admit the most worrying prospect as a landlord is the breathing space granted on mental health grounds. This could effectively result in the landlord losing control of his property indefinitely whilst the tenant seeks treatment. As I said earlier, mental health crisis treatment is seen as a short-term intervention, so if the system works as planned, the breathing space should also only last for approximately 60 days. This new legislation is all fine and well, and if it does work as intended, then it doesn't seem such a bad thing. However, I'm sure all landlords would like to avoid such a predicament in the first place, so there's probably a few areas where they could double down on when reference checking any prospective tenants. The first area is to be extra vigilant when it comes to an individual's credit and any existing debt. It's quite likely that someone with debt is more prone to future debt and more likely to qualify for a breathing space. I also see guarantors becoming far more important for any tenants wishing to rent in the future. The breathing space legislation does prevent landlords from pursuing tenants for rent arrears, however they can still pursue guarantors. Also, it's probably a good thing that the tenancy deposit cap came in 2019. Otherwise, I can't help but feel that some landlords would use this as a means of charging significantly higher deposits as a backup in case one of their tenants qualified for some breathing space. One thing for landlords to remember is that they may not be able to evict tenants during their breathing space for rent arrears. They can, however, evict them for other reasons that would ordinarily fall under a Section 8 notice. Things such as antisocial behaviour, for example. And for the time being, Section 21s, of course, are still an option. Now, hopefully that's given us all something to think about and plan for. Remember, it's the 4th of May when the debt respite policy comes into force, so there's still time for landlords to plan ahead and shore up their referencing procedures. Thank you for watching. If you could please like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated, and I will be back again with another video very soon. Thank you.